All right, I am now joined by Nando Vila, Wozni, Big Woz Lambre, and of course our token Italian, Mike Recine, to talk about another episode of The Sopranos. This is during our very slow crawl through the show. This is season 1, episode 2, 46 long.
Hell yeah, we'll make it eventually through the end when we're all old and gray.
It's funny watching one episode a month. You're like, I guess I'm going to rewatch Sopranos over the course of 30 years or whatever it's going to be. 6 years.
Yeah, about that, right? Since there was actually, what is it? Like there are 6. So one of the seasons there's an A and a B, right?
We're all going to look drastically different by the time this is over.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
We're going to age like AJ. Like I'm just going to become like really fat.
Yeah.
And
well,
goth.
AJ is actually less fat in this episode than he was in number 1.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, that was one of the. I mean, they made a few little changes.
That was back when you can tell a child actor to lose weight. It wasn't illegal. Now everything's so damn PC.
Do we know that that's what happened, or did he just get taller or something?
Maybe he went through a growth spurt or something. Yeah,
there must have been a long time between the pilot. I mean, Tony talks completely different. It's there was like definitely a lot of time between the pilot and the second episode.
Yeah.
No, and whatever. I think they retooled some things. It's possible they did tell him to lose some weight, or it's possible they just, like, for whatever reason, they wanted the character to be like, they thought they wanted him to be really fat, and so then like they just put a pillow in there or something. And they decided not to.
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure, but as we start this one up, Tony is coming downstairs in a sort of typical way. The rest of the family is up. He's still in his bathrobe. And AJ is talking about how the science teacher's car was stolen.
But wait, before there's the opening scene is amazing. The opening scene is them just hanging out, watching the mob guys hanging out, watching the news report of like the end of the mob, like some wise guy like turned and wrote a book or something, and he's like being interviewed like on a Charlie Rose type show, and it's like just a hilarious scene because like they're all watching it and they all have like their own little pet thing that they want to talk about, and none of them are like talking to each other. Like Pussy's obsessed with like cloning. Like it's like when they cloned that sheep for the first time, and that's like all he wants to talk about. Chris has like something about like Mexicans, and it's like unclear what he's talking about, And then Paulie like makes fun of Chris in some way, and he like repeats it to Silvio to make sure that he heard the joke that he did. It's just like an amazing.
He does the Paulie thing. I think you see a few times over the course of the series where it's like, "Hey, Sil, did you hear? I said, and then
and he just repeats the entire joke.
And none of them, even though you can tell they were all paying attention to it, none of them actually address what's being said on the TV, right? Which I think is very telling. It's like they don't want to talk about it because they know it's true. Like everything that's being said up there is 100% the truth.
Yeah, so they're saying like there's some like ex-mob guy turned informant turned best-selling author who's being interviewed, who's talking about how besides all the federal enforcement, one of the reasons that organized crime has been declining is because people don't honor, the code and
the rules.
They're breaking the rules because everybody's so afraid of the mandatory drug minimums, that they're ratting on each other and that they're not really respecting the rules that work for the elders. And Tony is the only person, like Waz was saying, who's reacting to it at all, right? He's like. Sort of muttering, shit, that's true, right? And like everybody else around him just wants to talk about anything but that.
Right. No, it's like it's a quintessential kind of Sopranos scene, and just that it's like, it's just dudes hanging out. It's got like miscommunications, like Pussy's talking about the cloning thing and Chris misunderstands him and starts talking about something else. And Pussy's like, no, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fucking sheep. Like, what are you talking about Mexicans? Like there's just like miscommunications. And then there's Silvio doing his Al Pacino impression. And everyone thinks it's like the best thing ever. It's just like your classic, it's your classic Sopranos scene, really.
Yeah. And it's barely an impression.
Right. Yeah.
It's really just saying the
Yeah.
line.
No, it's just him saying the line. Yeah. And Paulie's like, spitting image of Al Pacino, this guy.
And at the end of it, when the dude's like, the drug laws are crazy. Obviously, Rico, the way they can just tie you into a conspiracy, they can make anybody a conspirator in a Rico case. It's made it so that the repercussions are so onerous that dudes are snitching, right? And that's what held the entire organization together back in the days, was that like guys would just go to jail for 15 years and just do the time and come back and whatever. Like it was not even a question of whether somebody would talk to the police. And then Tony goes, if the shoe fits. Right. It's like, it's a bunch of snitches out here, man. I just thought that was dope, that the way they frame it, like, yeah, these guys know. They know the deal. That's why they're avoiding the conversation altogether.
Right.
And the funny thing is, in that scene too, is that they're still counting money, right? Like you see why it is they wouldn't want to stop, even though they know it's doomed. They're sitting at a table full of cash, just counting money. It's a really effective scene, man.
Yeah, fair enough. So I guess I messed this up because this is something the Sopranos stopped doing in later episodes. They did a cold open. So the scene I was starting with was the first one after the credit sequence, but since they hadn't quite nailed the format of the show yet, we didn't get the we'd like, usually I'm so used to watching these and it goes straight from that little screen fuzz HBO screen to the opening credit sequence. But after the cold open and the credit sequence, you get the scene at the breakfast table. We find out that AJ's science teacher had his car stolen, and Tony reacts by asking what grade AJ is getting in that class.
With like a D-.
Like, okay, I guess I'll look for the car. Maybe AJ can get up to a C-.
Yeah. No, it's just funny because Carmela's doing the thing. It's like, can you believe this? They stole his car right out of his parking lot, like as if she's not married to like a criminal. You know what I mean? Like it's like what's happening with society these days, where like a science teacher can't even park his car in our kid's school. It's like Tony, ask your criminal friend to see if you can find it. It's just like a great
this is like a very very typical. I'm going to try to resist the temptation to do what I did a bunch of last time, which is refer to shit that happens like 3 seasons in the future. But but this is a very typical Sopranos thing, that like anytime that like Carmela or even Tony will talk about crime as if they were just like
middle class suburban Americans.
Right. It's something that criminals do, and not how they are able to put food on the table and pay rent. And what's funny, it shows Carmela's contradictory nature, and which is why she's, probably my favorite character on the show, obviously outside of Tony, is
And here I thought you were an Uncle June guy.
I am Uncle June. It's tough because Uncle June basically makes me laugh in every single scene that he's in. Like, he makes me laugh. But Carmela's character is so beautifully drawn out, right? Like in the same scene that she asks Tony to get the car back. But Pussy has a car thing, doesn't he? Blah, 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 blah. And he mentions, I can get you a better grade by getting this car back. She's like, no, I want him to work hard for his grade. I want him to be a square. And it's like, this is so hypocritical,
Get his science teacher's car back, but like we can't have him like get a grade unfairly.
Right.
Yeah, there's sort of a fantasy about like the mafia using their powers for good. Like, because I had an aunt who was Sicilian and she had dementia for a long time, but she would ramble a lot about God and about the mafia. and one day she would just be like, yeah, the mafia, they're good people. They ask you, anybody bother you at school, they take care of it. And I think the first time I watched the show, I thought that's what it was. Tony was going to help the teacher out. I didn't see the selfish nature of it.
Well, I mean, the funny part too is like, I mean, we don't have to reveal it now, but the payoff to this little subplot of the Saturn is just so perfect, you know, like it's just that there is no good comes of this, you know, like yeah. Yeah, the Mafia can't do good. It could at best do a lateral move.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But that's the best case scenario. A lateral move in which like you're just transferring it to some other person and no one really gets hurt that bad, but no good comes of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So they do, they do find, I mean, at this, okay. Yeah. So let's save that. So, then I think the next thing we see is, Christopher and his complete loser,
Brendan Falone. Yeah.
Wannabe gangster friend, Brendan Falone, jacking a truck, which turns out, to belong to Uncle Junior. So, so it's a big problem. And actually when they're, it's also kind of a funny scene in a sort of horrible way. This is, when Mike was on the main show, that, there's a scene that, in a much later episode that I admitted to finding funny, that I think I was, from Mike's reaction, like it's I sort of, man, am I a sociopath? Should I not find this funny? And I think this was kind of the same thing a little bit.
It was nice to be on the other side of that conversation for once.
that I did that. It was like a little bit funny that the driver of the truck, who's obviously this totally innocent victim in all of this, like it's a horrible thing that happens, but he makes them beat him up a little bit because
and tie him up.
Says, you have to tie me up and I can't be unscathed or else they'll think I was in on it. And then of course, because of, because of whatever's wrong with Christopher and Brendan as people, like they beat him up way more than they have to,
right.
To have him look scathed, for the boss not to fire him.
To steal boxes of DVD players. There's like that great scene where like, I heard they don't have as many titles as the laser discs. He's like, no, it's got better sound quality though.
Yeah, that Tony makes fun of it. It's great for when I want to listen to Men in Black. So
the actor who is playing Brendan, I've seen him in one other thing besides The Sopranos. He was in this movie called Beer League. It's like Artie Lang, and I forget this lady's name, but she's done a bunch of shit, whatever. And he plays like, he doesn't play a criminal, but he plays like an extremely stereotypical Northeast Italian person, and he's doing a different version of that on The Sopranos too, which is it's kind of freaking just hilarious. But I think it's cool about. I think it's cool about this this character and his little plot line is it shows you how one tries to get into the mafia, right? Like how you try to become part of the gang. You sort of start off low level, prove that you are able to come up with money schemes and contribute to the organization, right? Like he's not like Christopher, who's family with guys who are already situated in it, and so therefore he has a ready-made path. Like he's sort of on the peripheral, the outside looking in, and he's trying to get noticed. It's like I don't know, it's like a high school basketball player putting good tape out there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's like trying to get a scholarship.
He's like an open micer of the mob.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's got to go the extra mile.
And it's immediately clear that it's not going to happen.
No, he doesn't have the chops.
Like Tony is just viscerally disgusted by him the first time you see them together. And part of that, I guess, is Brendan's meth habit. That's what he says. But like, it's also, I think it's also just that like Tony, I think just personally hates him. So this, we do, like any sentient viewer knows 10 seconds into this that that Brendan does not have a future in the mafia. But he's Christopher's buddy. They jack this truck together to get the DVDs, DVD players, and then which are a big item because when they find later, then Tony goes to a sit down with the acting boss at this point, Jackie Aprile, and at the sit down, Junior is complaining because the truck, in that mafia sense belonged to him, that it was that whoever
paid him protection. Yeah,
exactly, right.
Yeah. It's very telling about Junior's character that he called a sit down. There's only like one line that sort of alludes to it, but Tony's like, I wish I could work this out with my uncle instead of being invited to a sit down, which tells you a lot about Junior's character. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially it's weird because after the actual sit down part is over, Jackie's made his ruling. Then Junior wants to just like shoot the shit with Tony about family stuff.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh, I heard you put your mother in your mother's got someone coming to the house now. Yeah, that's good. Like, yeah. And it's like, it's at the end of the injury to Junior Soprano is something like $15,000. And like, that's
right.
That's what they have to meet with the boss for.
Oh man. And of course, at the end of the scene, he says, can you believe he lets us smoke, watch his mom or whatever,
Right. Like, well, that's the funny, like
racial epithet was.
Virulent
racism. So hilarious.
Yeah. Is that a, like,
I've never heard, I don't know smoke.
Don't ask me.
Okay. I
don't know. I was raised right.
Okay.
I didn't have no Trinidadian nanny come to my house.
But it's one of those things. The Sopranos are going to deploy a lot of racial epithets for Black people amongst, like, in the show, like throughout the history of the show. This is probably the first one. The one that they use the most, of course, is Moulignon, which is eggplant,
which is not even a creative slur, really. It's just another thing that's dark.
Exactly. But you'll get a lot of those throughout the course of The Sopranos, and I think that's something that you see in all mob art. Just the sort of like, these dudes are really fucking racist.
He called Meadows' boyfriend a charcoal briquette in another episode. I've never even heard that slur before. It's like you're just naming.
Mind you, and this dude was biracial and just a light-skinned dude. Like, he's not even a dark dude.
I remember literally when that happened, like during that sequence when Meadow was dating him, like there's a scene where they're like lying next to each other in bed. It's like, no, he isn't like really that noticeably darker than she is. But yeah. And I guess that also says something weird about like the kinds of like social progress that have or haven't happened in the United States, like the last several decades, that like it's like mildly shocking to see see like murderers.
I wonder if the mob guys are still, to the extent that I wonder if the mob guys are still super racist.
That guy who kills people for a living, said that offensive thing.
Right. But are they still like that? Like, I wonder if like the mob guys are now like kind of woke, like if there's like some wise guy out there.
No chance.
That's no chance. Like Tony, like when he meets the nanny, he's like, "Hey, let's get to one thing straight." Like the first thing he says to this like old Trinidadian lady, he's like
super duper nice to him. Like when he comes in, and he's like, "Yeah, no smoking ganja while you're taking care of my mother."
It's like.
Also, like, as a New Yorker, it feels like a lot of their recruiting base have just become cops. You know what I'm saying? And if you ever interacted with the native white people of New York who are now police officers, I don't think you would be disabused of racism amongst
like the guy who was in Epstein's cell, like Jackie Tortellini or whatever his name was in Epstein's cell, like the fucking roided out Italian cop who was killed 4 people for the mob or something. The guy was in Epstein's cell.
He was a corrupt cop.
His name is like Jackie Tortellini or something.
And he was like literally burying them in his own backyard.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And he cellmates with Epstein?
Yeah, dude, this is like the whole thing. He was Epstein's cellmate when Epstein first tried to commit suicide, quote unquote. He's just like standing over this unconscious guy, and he's like, I don't know what happened to him. He tried to commit suicide, and that's when they moved him. And then like they looked into it, like, who is this guy? And he's a cop who is like an Italian guy. Like, look him up. I mean, his name must be like, Louis Tagliatelle or something. And he's just super roided out, like enormous. And he's in jail for quadruple homicide.
And when you Google image him, there's a picture of him with like 4 pit bulls, like he's on his deck with like 4 giant dogs.
Yeah.
I think Italians have this weird kind of like obsession with race, though. I don't know what it is, but like they're always, I don't know, we're always like thinking, like maybe it's because we're like almost white, like we're sort of like the bottom of white people. I don't know what it is, but I had this uncle, and he would go to Atlantic City, and he would spend a lot of money because my aunt had dementia. So he would just sit her in front of a nickel machine with like $20 worth of nickels, and she would just pull the slot machine all day. But he would get a lot of free stuff from the room. And one time he got a TV, and then we went to Circuit City because the TV needed a remote. And so there was a guy, I think he was probably Filipino, and he was helping us out, and he helped us find a remote. And then we're leaving, and my uncle goes, "He was a nice Chinese guy." I don't know. They always like bring it up. It's funny.
So the funny thing is about that too, Mike, is when I was in high school, my first ever interactions with white people was in high school. Like from first kindergarten to 8th grade, it was all black people at my school, maybe a couple of Puerto Ricans, but all black, and not even just all blacks, mostly Caribbean people from Trinidad, Jamaica, Haiti, like my parents or whatever, right? And so high school is like sort of this culture shock of being in homeroom and realizing that there's like divisions amongst the white kids, like, just the meanest jokes about Polish people and Irish people and Italian people. And like, what I could gather was that the stereotypes is that Polish people are stupid. Irish people are drunks, and Italian people are kind of black. That's basically the diss. Yeah. That's the like sort of when people are making.
And then we're like, "How dare you?"
Exactly. And then you watch like True Romance and that.
Thinking about that scene, yeah.
You know what I mean? But I watched it play out in high school, where I'm just like, wow, that's crazy. Like, Chris Rock tells the old joke about like, I can't fuck with Farrakhan because he hates Jews. And he's like, my grandfather never made any he never distinguished between white people. It was just like, you Romanian cracker? Like, he was like, no, you're all crackers, right? Like, that was sort of my conception until high school, of course.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Livia stuff in this episode that she of course immediately hates the Trinidadian woman who's been brought in to help her out, who we should say is only brought in because she has she like lights it. She's cooking and there's a grease fire like while she's talking to Tony, although I think that only happens because she's peering through the window, like being suspicious about the mail delivery woman across the street, which is
a black mail delivery woman.
Right. Well, same thing, right? What's she? Because like the mail delivery woman is like putting like leaning down to like stick a package in the door. She's like, "What she's up to?" And then then there's this grease fire, and she initially wants Tony to drive over from the Bada Bing to put it out, and he's like, "No, I'm 40 minutes away. You got to just call somebody." But a big part of what's going on here is that Livia is just generally confused about like how telephones work, basically.
Right.
And so after this happens, right, the fire department comes. Carmela is dispatched to take care of it, and they bring in this Trinidadian woman who Livia is immediately, obviously incredibly racist, but also she just like generally like hates all other human beings. So, that's just extended to this woman like right away, like instantaneously, that she's convinced that she's like stealing like all of her stuff. Even though, as Tony points out, like, she's constantly giving all of her things away because, she thinks she's going to die soon.
Yeah. No, it's like it's great, and she's just like perennially unsatisfied. Like Tony's like trying his absolute best to do something nice for her, like brings her flowers, and she's just like constantly like never gives him even the slightest ounce of gratitude or satisfaction or anything for all the nice things he's trying to do to her.
Yeah, that's right. So after Livia, we don't see what she did exactly, but she does something to get the Trinidadian woman to quit, and then so at that point he's finally ready to send her to a home, to Green Grove, which there's a lot of angry dialogue about how it's not a nursing home. It's a retirement community.
There's a great joke because he's telling his therapist Melfi about it, and she's like, "Oh, that's a nice place. That place is nice. That's like a hotel on Cap d'Antibes, like." And Tony's like, yeah, like he knows what she's talking about, And then like later on in the episode, he's like arguing with his mom. He's like, "It's like Captain Teeb," and and she's like, "Who's that? Who's Captain Teeb?" He's like, "Some captain who like had nice hotels. I don't know what the fuck,
Yeah, I mean that's one of the most common recurring gags of The Sopranos or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's always funny, that like Tony hears something from Melfi that he doesn't quite understand but still repeats anyway.
Right.
And Livy, of course, responds to the thought that he would force her into a nursing home by, screaming about how he might as well just grab the butcher knife from the kitchen and stick it right into her heart because that would hurt less than him doing this. But he does it anyway. He does it anyway after she runs over one of her friends in the driveway. So yeah. So Tony is finally convinced that this can't happen. There's also a little funny thing where we see Carmela offer to Olivia that she could just come live with them. And then we also see Tony telling Dr. Melfi that Olivia can't live with them because Carmela would never allow it.
Right. straight up just lying. But
yeah,
the crazy thing too, that they're establishing very, very, very early on in the season is like, this is not a good person. Not as we conceive of quote unquote good people. I'm talking about Olivia, of course. Like she's pretty much a terrible mom, and she's not great at pretty much any of the other relationships, whether it be, we're going to see some of the grandmother stuff later, but whether it be grandmother, mother-in-law, with sister-in-law, like she's just not good to the people that are around her. And of course, she does the ultimate dirtbag thing at some point in the season, which is, at the time was just kind of crazy, right? Like just the radical idea that Chase wrote in there for this woman. But they're a horrible person.
All right, you cut off there for a second, at least for me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that they established really early that she's a miserable, horrible person, and that you kind of get to understand why Tony is so damaged, like why he has all of these mommy issues. Like this lady is bad.
Yeah, and she does this thing in this episode where every time she refers to her late husband, John, Johnny Boy Soprano, then he always, she always says, "Oh, he was a saint." But like, even at this point, I think you have a pretty good sense that this would not be how she talked about him while he was still alive.
Yeah. No, yeah, obviously. I mean, Carmela comes and like saves her ass, right? She comes to the house, and like while it's like burning down, and like saves her, and she doesn't even like express like an inch of gratitude for it, you know, like not even oh, thanks for coming, you know, like whatever, but like nothing, you know. Carmela's like trying to be nice to her, and she's just like just not giving her anything.
Fair enough. So meanwhile, in the science teacher Saturn plot, Pussy is assigned this task, you know, that he has to track it down, you know, through his body shop, which he obviously just resents the shit out of having to do this, you know, like weird little errand. But they track it down, and this was as somebody was pointing out, you know, before we started recording, this is an impressive little representational victory. You know who the who the car thieves turned out to be.
Yeah, I mean the way they figure out who it is, like they figure out that this thief works at a like what is like basically a Starbucks chain, and they're like everywhere. It's a coffee chain, and they go there to start. They go to like each coffee chain, try to figure out where he worked, and like
which is awesome in itself because as they're visiting these thinly disguised Starbucks, Paulie is like working himself up into
so good
about Italian culture being stolen by Starbucks.
It's so good. Yeah, it's like almost pre-woke. It's like cultural appropriation before that was a buzz term. Paulie Walnuts was a pioneer of that.
Facts. You know. And at that time, man, like Starbucks is, you know, it's ridiculous how successful and ubiquitous it is too. But this was like pretty early on in the Starbucks sort of craze nationally. I've never been to Seattle. I'm sure it was different over there. But I remember my cousin, one of his first jobs was at Starbucks. It was kind of a big deal in downtown Brooklyn. And that had to be like 97 or 98, you know. So this is very early on in Starbucks taking over freaking coffee all over the place.
Yeah.
Just Paulie Walnuts like, my culture's not a costume. You understand?
Exactly.
Oh, you see somebody dressed up on Halloween.
It's like, hey,
what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
You know how hurtful that costume is? How demeaning and degrading that is?
What, you're doing a couple's costume, Mario and Luigi? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, so when Pussy has finally figured out who the car thieves are, the cultural appropriation thing culminates in Paulie just like angrily stealing like some like piece of coffee equipment from.
I think that's an espresso maker.
Okay.
Like the manual one, not the obviously not
it's
the.
It's an Italian coffee maker. The little the one that you twist and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Mike Epps, by the way, one of the card thieves, which I found
Mike Epps.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Did not realize that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the
good.
car thieves are this Latin gay couple who like wear like short shorts and and like talk like like that couple would in the show that was made in the late 90s.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And they after busting in there, and actually there's a like kind of a funny revealing moment that after they've already like started to brutalize them, that the car thieves still assume that they're cops.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not hard to. It's not hard to believe that cops would fuck some people up. Like that's that seems like obvious. Everybody knows that. To the point when they do shit like that, people be like, "What did you expect? They're cops."
Right.
So
yeah. So then actually, so maybe somebody because I realized as I was rewatching this last night that I didn't quite get like. So was the idea that it already like the car had already been chopped up, so like the license plate was just on some other different random car at this point?
Yeah, I guess so. Because it seemed like that was the car, and it was already cooked, and so
Right.
that shit at the end of the episode, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be paint.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that what they did was Pussy forces them, because they're car thieves,
steal another one.
to
Yeah,
steal a different Saturn of the same make, but they couldn't find one in the same color, so they just stole some other Saturn and then painted it at Pussy's body shop. And it's just like, it's the payoff. It's right, like it's like, the science teacher got his car back, but someone else got their fucking car stolen. Right. It's like they just passed on the pain to some other random schlub with a Saturn. No, it's a pretty hilarious payoff.
Yeah, it's a mafia version of one of those like O. Henry stories with the one person gets the other one a hairbrush, but they've sold their hair and all that. But yeah. So meanwhile, Christopher and Brendan Filone after are like, so I guess like this is just there so you get a sense of like how low in the totem pole they are, even though Christopher does have the golden track to the top of the organization eventually, because of his family connection, but how low in the totem pole they are right now. And you see them like waiting outside of a club and not being let in. And then you see there's a cameo by Martin Scorsese, right? That's yeah.
Christopher has that great line. He's like, Marty, Kundun, I liked it. It's like one of the best lines in the show. Kundun.
And by the way, very accurate New York City velvet rope culture, like 100%. A bunch of people. There's no like, whenever you show up to one of these type of clubs, the line is imaginary. Like it's there, but it doesn't matter. Like you're either getting in or you're not, right? Like and a lot of times you can wait and be like, and the dude will be like, all right, you don't know anybody here. You got to do a $75 bar tab minimum, or you got to do this, or you got to do that if you're waiting, right? But if you know somebody, if you're supposed to be there, you're getting right in just like Marty Scorsese. And like the part where, he basically looks through Christopher and Brendan and says, ladies, and then he brushes them off like, yo, get out the way. Like very accurate portrayal of doorman.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, yeah, Kenny Portugal told me to say hi. And then he's like,
Kenny, word, okay.
Kenny, yeah.
And then it just continues to not let them in. Totally doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
So eventually they do get into the club, and while they're up there, they are they're I guess I thought snorting, anyway, whatever, they're snorting something, and they're both getting like riled up about the Junior situation because they had to make this extravagant tribute to make it up for him, and of course, being complete idiots, what they get out of this is that as retaliation, even though they got into so much trouble for this the first time, that they need to just do exactly the same thing again.
Yeah, and this time it's not DVD players; it's Italian suits. Yes. And those move quickly. Yeah, it's like what? Like how can it be easy to move like 200 Italian suits and make money off? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. Like it makes more sense to DVD players, but like Italian suits, like who are you gonna sell stolen Italian suits to?
Yeah, but it definitely does establish Christopher's. He's like the drug abuse and just the lack of impulse control that he has.
But it's the conflict in a lot of Sopranos, in that like the young guys need to prove themselves, and the old guys just want them to kind of like keep their head down and kind of stay in line. But like Tony became Tony by doing that, by basically just like, I mean, I think it was like Fitch Lamana, right? That he like robbed this poker game or something, and like that's what made him like who he is today. Like he kind of skipped the line by doing the exact same thing that he's telling Chris not to do. It's like the kind of thing that like, I don't know. It's like you could find yourself in a situation where if you don't do anything like that, you'll be stuck kind of just doing bullshit jobs forever.
Yeah. So they convince themselves that this is what they have to do. By the way, I should say that like one thing that I guess like really dates this is that the DVD player is like a big enough deal that was part of the like them getting mad at Tony. It's like, well, I noticed you're not returning your DVD player.
Right. Yeah. Which like today costs like $30. Yeah. Like in 1999 must have cost like $800.
Yeah.
Right. So, but then Christopher, like not being quite as stupid as Brendan, or he's got like a little bit of a sense of the rules or loyalty or whatever. So he ends up deciding not to do it. Right? He's sitting there, the next night or whenever they're supposed to actually do this other hijacking. He's sober. He's had some time to think about it, and he's not going to do it. So Brendan goes out and does it without him, and
finds a couple of gangbangers.
My man Bodie,
like you would never be able to do that today. Yeah, they're just like comically like gangster looking black guys to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like right. The gay Puerto Rican guys are going to be exactly who gay Puerto Rican guys would be in like a 90s TV show. And the gangbangers that gets to help him hijack the truck are exactly who those guys would be, in a TV show from this era.
It's conscious decision to definitely make the JV squad some black dudes for sure.
Right. Yeah. Like holding the gun sideways, like in the music videos and shit. Yeah.
At the audition, they were like, "Hi, my name is Marcus James Stevenson, and I'll be reading for the part of Thug number 1." Break yourself, fool!
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, man, you never know. Bodie, from The Wire, he might have got thrown into the HBO ecosystem from this little role, and.
That
was him, right?
I thought that was joking. I didn't realize.
That was him.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't like 100% sure, and I didn't want to like bring it up, but
no, it was him.
Yeah. Lest I be accused of something. Yeah. But yeah,
I thought it was the night of, I guess, and he's been in a lot of other HBO stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, like one of their guns like just goes off accidentally. The driver is very like chill about it, like you get the sense that he's been hijacked before, and like he doesn't.
Well, he's in on it.
What's that?
He's kind of in on it. Yeah, the guy, he mentions that he's friends with the guy who Brendan has on the inside, who's giving him all the tips. He's like, oh yeah, no, I know all about this. I know Mike. Like, let's get my lunch. Let's do this.
Yeah. But then one of the guns goes off and it accidentally kills him. And of course, Brendan's freaking out about this. And because like nobody can stand Brendan, certainly Tony can't. Then like when Christopher manages to get a hold of Tony, and they bring in, let's say Tony's there, Polly or Silvio. Yeah. And there are a few of them there, and they're just completely unsympathetic. You're like, what about the driver? He's dead. He's like, I don't know. It's like blast some cold water in his face. See if anything happens.
Yeah. Pray to St. Anthony. He might come back to life.
So
yeah, they don't give a shit. Yeah.
Not whatsoever. And meanwhile, like Silvio is like eyeing the suits. He's like, we have to give all of them back.
Looks pretty nice. He does his Al Pacino impression again.
Yeah. Which again is just saying the line plus doing like
just
this.
Saying the line in Silvio's voice. Yeah.
Yeah. So they this hasn't quite come to a head yet. I think if I'm remembering right, like I think maybe even like next episode, like I think very quickly the Brendan Flown, plot line comes to a head, but it doesn't quite in this episode. Instead, there is, well, I guess we should say, right. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There are a lot of Melfi's office scenes in this episode, because Tony is struggling with the situation with Livia, and so he spends all this time telling Dr. Melfi like about all of the horrible shit that Livia constantly does and says. There's a very funny scene in there where Melfi is like just challenges him like, okay, so like give me one good memory from your child. You know?
Just one.
Yeah.
Like
a single tender moment. Yeah.
His dad fell down the stairs and they laughed at him. That was the tender moment that he shared with his mom. His dad almost paralyzing himself.
Everybody just standing there
and them laughing at it.
So he's given Melfi all the evidence in the world about how like toxic and awful Livia is. But then like when when Melfi reflects some of that back at him, is like, yeah, now Livia seems like a really messed up person. And then he gets furious at her for, speaking ill of his mother.
You know what's so interesting?
Or suggesting that he wouldn't love his mother.
What's interesting too is that a lot of times you'll see like teenagers, especially on TV, just talking shit about their parents, right? Like, oh, my mom's such a bitch, and this and that, and blah blah blah. Whereas it's like parents just, trying to help you like survive and live, and the teenagers rebel or whatever. Tony's doing the opposite thing here. He's just coming up with every single excuse as to why his mom is, a decent human being and was a decent mom to him, which I just think is interesting. I don't know that I've ever seen kids who were basically actually abused by their parents stick up for them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's interesting what he's doing there.
That might be an Italian or a Catholic thing, that hierarchy.
Yeah.
You respect your parents.
Yeah, right.
In the
right.
church.
Yeah.
And the priest who molested you, you respect him.
Right. Yeah. It's like, it's just because that's what's done. That's what's expected.
We love authority.
Yeah. It's your mom. What are you talking about? Like, of course you love her. Like, there's just no questioning that. Yeah.
Yeah, should also say, since we skipped this, that Tony has another small panic attack.
Yep.
Because he's collecting Livia's things to bring over to Green Grove, and he sees some like old photos, and he starts to have a panic attack, although he doesn't actually pass out. And then when he starts talking about this with Dr. Melfi, that's when she suggests to him that he resents his mother, and he takes that as her saying that he doesn't love his mother, and then he blows up at her and says, I think for the first of 500 times, that he's never going back there. Like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And then at the end, actually, I should say, before getting to the payoff at the very end, there's also been this running thread throughout the episode about the bartender at the Bing.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. I don't know if it's
I
ever
am that
addressed,
bartender, by the way.
Well, Tony like is particularly cruel to dumb fat guys that kind of look like him. Like he's particularly like cruel to him, to the bartender at the Bada Bing, and to Bobby Bacala. Like he picks on them. It's almost like he resents them for being a fat guy like him, but not being smart like him.
Yeah, so a big part, like mostly what he's pissed off at the bartender for in this episode is like not being able to operate a telephone. It's like, it's like, my mother can't master this anyway, but she's 70 years old. What's your excuse?
Right.
And like, although it's mostly just stuff like the bartender like gets confused about how to put him on hold, and put the call on hold and transfer it to another line, and like all of that, like all of that stuff that that you do with I vaguely remember people doing with landline phones. And
also related to this, earlier in the episode, after the sit down when Tony has that like tit for tat with Junior's driver, they established that relationship, and they established like Tony, like when he wants to be a real son of a bitch or dick or asshole, like he is extremely good at it. He is so good at it. And you see
he's good at picking on people.
Yeah, he's incredible at it. And you see the dynamics between him and Junior's driver, where like Junior's driver is Junior's fake nephew, and like Tony's like his actual nephew. So it's like that weird sibling rivalry type of situation. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, he goes out of his way to stop by the car where Junior's driver is waiting to to like repeatedly fuck with him and like
that shit was hilarious.
And then be like,
he's doing that thing that like mafia guys do. Right? He's doing that thing that mafia guys do, where it's like, or at least they do it in the movies, where like they like insult you. They're like, come on, we're just we're just friends here. You can take it. Come on, like, and then he like does it again. He's like, no, come on, you're a big, like you like, you could do it, like we're just breaking balls, no big deal. And then he like does it again and ups the ante a little bit each time, like, and the guy's like, yeah, okay, like it's like eventually he's just gonna like go get his fucking shine box,
Exactly.
It seems to be a recurring theme that he's petty and he picks on people and he's a bully.
Right.
And I think, but it's funny how there's so many people who I think watch the show and don't pick up on that. Because by the time you get to the later seasons, like season 6, they're really trying to hammer it home that they're like, he's not a good guy. He's not a hero, because I think they're getting too many fan letters of people be like, I love Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
I model my life after him.
This like extremely disturbed, like, not in great shape, person who shakes people down and kills them for a living and like isn't even happy about it. Like, that's no, that's who you want to be, like, if at all possible, like,
and he has the power. He has the power of having people behind him, so he's able to fuck with people.
Right.
He's like a true bully, I guess.
Yeah, right. No, for sure. I mean, like it's that thing, that line. I mean, all gangster movies do this to one extent or another. Like they have, like they let you, like, they make you think about like how cool and fun it would be to be able to just force people to do things, because they're afraid of you all the time. Like at the beginning of Goodfellas, that the kids in the neighborhood, walked my mom's, groceries home, and they didn't park their cars in there, and all that stuff. At the same time is like reminding you that of how like incredibly sadistic and disturbing the whole thing is, and like that's pretty much like that's pretty much the move if you're going to make fiction about this, is to like play with that line. And so of course you're going to get people who watch it who only like really pick up on the first part.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that does look cool. Let's do it.
Do you guys think you could ever, because I don't know if this has been done in a mob movie, but do you think you could ever write a movie where you essentially kind of like say something about labor, where it's about the relationship between the boss and the guys who like go out and do the dirty, like some of the dirty work? Because I think that was kind of the relationship between Gotti and Castellano, because Gotti had the respect of the guys who were like more street guys.
Right. Yeah. Like that at the end of the day, like the boss is like, that's what I've always wondered is like, how they get away with the fact that like, in order to protect themselves from the law, like the big capos have to basically outsource literally everything, So at a certain point, it's like the emperor has no clothes. Like, what are they doing?
What do they do?
How do they have any power? Like as long as it's the only power they have is because people continue to just like keep up the fiction.
There's like a structure in place. Exactly.
Yeah. But like, other than that, they have no actual thing. Like they don't do anything. They're just kind of, they have to completely be, they can't even give orders directly because that'll implicate them. So yeah, it's just like, they just have power because they have it. It becomes like a tautology.
Right. And then I guess it also depends on people buying into it too,
Yeah. I mean, although that's
in The Sopranos, they show that Tony does get his hands dirty, and Tony is like a big and powerful dude and can like overpower people physically a lot, and he's like intimidating in that sense, and he like actually goes out and kills people, and sometimes he just like beats the shit out of people or whatever. Like in this one, when he gets mad at Brendan Furlone, he like throws him out of a room and he goes flying like across the room. Like I can't pick someone up and throw them, no matter how small. Like they wouldn't fly that far, Like they established that he is like a physical. Imposing dude, and that is a source of his power. But yeah, I mean, these old guys who are just hang around and sip their espresso all day and just kind of give coded
Yeah.
Like I don't see why. Yeah.
Although that is kind of how all power structures work. Like that, I mean, it only works because the people below you, below somebody, like are going along with it. I mean, like that's the, like, I mean, ultimately, like any political or business or anything. Yeah, let's actually, this could be a whole thing. Like, all right, I think everybody knows who watches this knows about socialism and stuff. So, don't have to like develop the thought too much, but like, you could just decide to stop going along with any power structure.
Right.
So, so at the end of the episode, we already kind of alluded to it. We get the payoff from the first post credit scene, which is the return of the science teacher's car.
Yeah.
He's like, I wanted to find notes and lesson plans.
Yeah, my papers. It's a different key. That's weird.
Yeah.
And AJ's like,
yeah, my dad got it back. He's a hero.
He told my Uncle Pussy to go find it. And the guy's like, Uncle Pussy.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird.
My dad's a hero.
The inside of the trunk is a different color, and
the paint is coming off on my fingers. Yeah,
but I guess everybody, everybody standing there like knows who AJ's dad is, so like nobody's gonna quite say what they're all thinking. It's just like, oh, that's funny. Okay, well, listen, great, cool.
That's another question I always have, because I feel. That's like a question that I would probably have for like the New York people, because is it like, because it used to be the case, right? People would more or less know who the mob bosses were around, but like if the current head of whatever the fuck mob like walked into a store, like would you recognize him? Like, do we know who these people are, or because they used to be kind of like media figures?
Yeah, John,
but like no longer.
John Gotti was definitely the last of that kind, right? And the rest of the guys that came after him, there was one last guy who was like the boss of bosses, who was making millions of dollars. I forget his fucking name right now. And he actually ended up snitching too, which is crazy. But they learned like, yo, you don't want to be on TV. You don't want people knowing your name. Yeah. You want to move in silence. He was the last of that kind, like that sort of celebrity don or whatever. And he loved it because he was an attention whore. But I think people in your neighborhood certainly know. You know what I'm saying? Like if you walk into a local restaurant or the deli or whatever, 100%, those people are gonna know who the hell you are. But if you're a mafia boss and you live in, say, Staten Island, and you walk into some random spot in Rego Park in Queens, nobody's gonna know who the fuck you are.
Yeah. But then it kind of becomes like, then what's the point of being the boss if you can't enjoy the spotlight and you can't like have a whole truck full of turkeys that you hand out to people on Thanksgiving and give kids fireworks and stuff? It's like, then what do? You just sit in a dark room and collect money?
That's it.
And you pretend that you have dementia?
Yeah. Did you guys actually watch the John Gotti movie?
Yeah,
the one directed by E from Entourage.
Yeah.
It's so funny. You can feel the Gotti family like in his ear the whole time in the movie. You can feel them being like, say he was a great guy and he was beloved by the community.
Right. Yeah. No, I haven't seen it. Is it good? Is it worth watching? Like, is it so bad it's good, or is it just kind of boring?
You should watch the first 5 minutes of it. If you don't want to keep watching, you should stop watching it. But it's really funny because it starts off with John Gotti like standing in front of the Brooklyn Bridge. It's Travolta, and he like turns around and he goes, New York City. And then he's like
greatest, like the Big Apple, baby.
Yeah. And then there's even a point where Stacy Keach plays I forget, Neil Delacroix, who was like Gotti's like mentor, and he was like, you need to take control of the 5 boroughs, and then he names the 5 boroughs.
Yeah, it's a typical New York guy thing to do. Is like the 5 boroughs are Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, and Manhattan. Yeah. No, when I was a kid growing up in Miami, there was a mob bust like 3 houses down from mine. Yeah, just like I knew this kid growing up, and then like one day, like all over the newspaper, his dad got busted, and he was Cuban mafia. But like it wasn't like everybody knew, and it was just kind of like in the Sopranos, like, oh, look, there's Tony Soprano, like he's the head of the New Jersey mob or whatever. Like it wasn't like that. It was just no one knew, and then all of a sudden they're busted.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I'm thinking about like last year. I want to say maybe even earlier this year. There was a mob boss in Staten Island. Who was killed by a like some like QAnon guy.
Like QAnon? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that was a great story.
Yeah, he was the boss of the Gambino family.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Gambino family.
Like a
I'm surprised you didn't hear about it. Yeah, he got shot in front of his home.
Yeah, so that guy was like clearly somebody who only knew that this person was a mob boss because they'd read about it in the newspaper, right? I mean,
right. And everybody was like, "Oh my god, the mafia is back!" And it was just some QAnon psycho who like couldn't date the guy's daughter, couldn't date the guy's niece. He wanted to date the guy's niece, and he couldn't.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize there was a personal dimension. I just thought it was like he thought that like the mob was like helping the lizard people with Pizzagate or something. Okay,
so the QAnon thing was just a coincidence.
Yeah.
Okay, well that actually in a way that makes it not quite as ridiculous, because I remember when I heard that thinking just like, oh my god, like imagine somebody who does everything you need to do to like rise through the ranks and get to be the head of the Gambino family, and like you're doing this now, so you have to be like absurdly good at like evading like surveillance and worried about all the RICO stuff, and then like you finally got to the top of the pyramid and you're just killed by like some psycho who read something on the internet, that makes
thinks you're a pedophile.
Yeah. Like
thinks you're like in bed with like Tony Podesta.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So final thoughts about the episode.
I thought it was very, very different from the pilot, and because in the pilot, I mean, I think in the pilot, Tony's clearly the boss, but also it seems like there's a little more effort for them to be like, to make them a little more unlikable and unsavory. And I think that was kind of the point that they were trying to drive home. I feel like maybe in the pilot, they tried to make them a little more like redeeming. But now they're trying to be like, these are people you're not supposed to like.
Yeah.
Which seems kind of a common thing throughout the show.
Again, I'm every time I rewatch Sopranos, I'm struck by just how funny the writing is, like just how funny it is, man. Like there's no show on TV today that is as funny as The Sopranos. Like this just I don't know, like there's just it's not as
it's just laugh after laugh after laugh.
Yeah, the joke, and it's all like even like the whole premise of this episode is like a big joke, right? The whole Saturn subplot is like a big joke with a payoff.
Well,
but
nothing's funny anymore.
Nothing is funny. That's true. That's the real. Yeah.
Like you guys ever like browse Netflix and you're like, I'm not excited to watch any of this. It all seems like
everything is bad and nothing is funny. Especially like comedies, like especially like kind of I require a lot. It requires like like I need like 5 of like my best friends who I really trust. Like no, this is really like Big Mouth. Like there's no way that show's good. I don't know. Like there's no way I'm gonna laugh at like a joke on.
Could you imagine being in that writer's room? By the way.
Just in Big Mouth,
yeah.
I
don't know. I just feel like,
like just being like very, very worried about what kind of jokes you throw out there about like hormonal teens. But I just really I really struggle with modern day comedies.
Yeah, I mean, plus it's like innately annoying if you're looking through Netflix, like while trying to find things to watch, because they're starting to do the thing where they like non-consensually start the video, like the preview as you're just trying to browse, so you're actively annoyed the entire time, that you're trying to find something.
It just feels like a lot of shows they're making today. It's like they check the boxes and they're like doing an imitation of something that's supposed to be, but there's no like there's no heart to a lot of the stuff.
Yeah. I did quite like The Great on Hulu about the Russians in the 1600s. Like I thought that felt like a little bit fresh to me from a comedy standpoint, but Like all the other, I don't know what other show is like people think is funny now. There's no way I'm gonna like enjoy it and find it funny.
Yeah. I think any Netflix show.
Well, most Netflix stuff is bad, and it all kind of looks the same. I mean, that movie that you look at the reviews, it got great reviews, but the Christmas movie, the sort of lesbian Christmas movie, it was so bad.
You can't watch a Netflix rom-com.
Dude, I watched it like with my girlfriend, thinking it was gonna be like a funny, kind of lighthearted Christmas thing that you feel good, and it was just like it was so aggressively bad.
No.
What was bad about it?
I mean, like it wasn't funny at all. And it didn't even have like that kind of heart that you would want in like one of these movies.
So it wasn't sentimental, and it wasn't.
There's none of that shit. Like I don't know. It just sucked. Like it just really, really sucked. And like a
lot of entertainment just feels very focus grouped and like kind of manufactured.
No, yeah,
right.
Totally. Yeah. Like, first of all, like this is like a lesbian Christmas movie, and like the lesbian, like the comic relief, a lot of it comes from Aubrey Plaza. Is it Aubrey Plaza? I don't even remember who the fuck. But
a sister or
Kristen Stewart's in it. I know that. I seen that she did.
Yeah, Kristen Stewart. Kristen Stewart. Yeah. Her best friend is like a gay guy. And like I'm pretty sure that that's like a thing that like doesn't really happen that often. But
lesbians and gays being friends,
lesbians having friends.
Sorry. But like it just felt like really that's why it felt really like you said, really focus grouped, like where like they have to like include like all this stuff to check boxes and yeah, it all felt very cobbled together. And not like a coherent whole to me. I don't know. It sucked. It sucked so much, I thought. And like, but you look at the reviews, it's like, this is a great fun thing. And I'm like, it doesn't even work on that level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Waz, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just the comedy aspect. Like just watching it. This is only my third time around watching the show. And of course I remember the show being funny. But it's really wacky, screwball. Like it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like this. Like when you watch that episode, you don't like the drama. There's dramatic stuff happening, but the show is leaning into the comedy of it all. Which that's what struck me watching this episode too. Is just how much they leaned into comedy. Not that it's funny at all. Of course, I remember it being funny. And a lot of these shows were hilarious. Like Breaking Bad was hilarious. Mad Men was hilarious. The Wire was hilarious. A lot of these shows did mix in a good amount of comedy, but did like Sopranos, it feels like I'm watching like straight up. No, when they got together, they're like, how do we make this episode as hilarious as possible? Not as dramatic tension or any of that stuff. They were trying to be funny.
Yeah,
for sure. Mike?
Yeah, I guess like I said, just the show being different from the pilot. I guess like it's I don't know, just cool to see characters who have characteristics. I mean, I keep thinking about the way that entertainment is produced now, and I keep thinking like there's such a disparity between what I would like and what I want to make and what gets made. And you can just kind of imagine, you can just sort of picture like you get an idea for something and you can just imagine the pitch meeting. And with and people being like, all right, but what about this? Well, this might make the person unlikable, and you would just be like, well, that's the point. That's kind of the point.
Yeah,
people are unlikable. People are likable and unlikable. So I just, to me, the authenticity. It seems like to find characters that are authentic. Like I've been watching. I never saw King of the Hill, so I've been working my way through that show, and I'm enjoying that show a lot. But there's nothing from this era that I really like, that I'm dying to watch, that I'm excited to watch, even though there's so much of it. There's so much content. So yeah, to see authentic characters that are unlikable.
Well, that's the thing is like in this kind of thing, it's not about likability versus it's relatability. It's like, do you find some reason to hitch your wagon to this guy's journey?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you have to find him likable. Like, I mean, that's what I think a lot of people these days don't understand.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference there. But like I don't know, like there seems to be some sort of dumbing down of the culture or something that treats us like children, that we will not be able to, like, they have to signpost everything these days. We're like,
but you're just getting
instead of just
era. Good.
Yeah.
You're in this era of like moral. You're in this era of like moral posturing. There was a comic back in the summer who was like, and so in the summer, like there were nobody was doing stand up. Everybody was miserable. Everybody was trying to like figure out, kind of what was going on. People were bored, and there was a guy who was like digging up a lot of old tweets. He was digging up other people's old tweets and like commenting on them and complaining. And then somebody found his old tweets. And they were way more offensive from like 6-7 years ago. And they were just way more offensive than anything that he was commenting on. And it's just like, we're all like this. Nobody is
I get the sense that I'm not like completely sold on this, but I get the sense that the fever is kind of breaking. I mean, like they tried to cancel Kyle Kulinski by finding all his old problematic tweets, and they're genuinely kind of, it's hilarious. It's like funny to see them. It's funny to see them, but it's not sticking to him. Like it's not sticking. It's like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, like he would have been toast. But it's just not sticking anymore. I think people are tired of it, and it doesn't have the same juice as it used to. But there's just something. But they're still trying.
Yeah, there's something very corporate about it too, where it's like we're gonna dig up stuff, and it's this culture of like, fucking people over and stepping over people to get ahead and get promoted, and also like having to toe the company line. And you can't say anything.
Totally. Like a lot of this stuff, I think it's like the way that people in like the professional managerial class are trained to like kind of step over each other to like climb up these like corporate or educational or whatever, like all these different ladders that they're trying to climb all the time. And like you even get people in like lefty political spaces who are doing it even though they're like officially committed to being like total opponents of of the sort of reigning meritocracy or whatever, because like whatever they were formed by that and they're going to act like that.
But most people don't identify with that or don't relate to it.
No, and it's hard to talk about this kind of stuff without sounding like if you go to the Comedy Store in LA at any given night, like 2 of the 3 comedians will be like complaining about this, and they're usually like they usually sound like just like right wing people who are like, and it's hard not to. It's hard it's hard to talk about this without sounding like some like right wing person, but they're like, it sucks that we've ceded that to them in a way. Like, how do we talk about it in a way that is not like, does not make us like sound like, Sebastian Maniscalco or something, You got
to tell people to stop being bitches. That's all.
Right.
Also, why did you attack the only successful Italian comic in the last 20 years?
Hey, sorry.
That's all right.
Is he the only one?
No, I don't think so. But recently, I think. But I know exactly what you're talking about. They'll be like, everything's just so PC nowadays.
Yeah.
Anyway, how can a man have a vagina, right, folks?
Right. Right.
They're just like dumb. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, like, and I mean, this is, I mean, Mike, when you're on the show, this is one of the things we were talking about, that like it's like the sort of 2020 kind of manifestation of the culture wars is terrible for comedy in both directions, because like in like both like the woke and anti-woke versions, it leads to lots of stuff that's not actually really even exactly trying to be funny. It's just sort of like declaiming things that the audience is going to agree with, so they can like do that. That clapter, which like you tell them that's right.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, episode 3, which we are going to be back on in January to talk
2021, baby.
21 already, is called Denial, Anger, Acceptance. It's the one with the Hasidim in it. So if people remember that, so good stuff to look forward to.
Or you from Goodfellas.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And really appreciate you guys. As always, it's a lot of fun. I think I am going to continue to enjoy this for the 125 years it's going to take us to get through the entirety of The Sopranos. And I'll see everybody next month.